The night Marshall Vane raised his glass to toast his own success, his wife was standing in the back of the room, still wearing the black dress she had worn to her mother's funeral 3 weeks before. That is where this story begins. Not at the moment of betrayal, though that moment is coming and it will take your breath away. It begins at 7:14 on a Friday evening in November. On the 30th floor of the Kimberly Hotel in Midtown Manhattan, where floor-to-ceiling windows frame the skyline like a painting no one commissioned but everyone wants. The room smells like white lilies and cold champagne. Jazz plays low enough to be ignored. 200 people in tailored coats and expensive perfume fill the space. Investors, journalists, old business contacts, all here to celebrate the official launch of Vane Capital Partners. Petra stands near the far wall. She holds a glass she hasn't touched. Her hair is pinned neatly. Her eyes follow her husband as he moves through the crowd like a man who has forgotten what fear feels like. She remembers when he was terrified every single day. 9 years ago, Marshall Vane was a man with a borrowed desk, a rejected business plan, and a credit card bill he couldn't look at directly. Petra was the one who kept the lights on. She taught art classes in the mornings, worked part-time at a small gallery in Brooklyn in the afternoons, and came home to cook dinner and tell him it would work out. She believed that before he did. She sold her grandmother's gold bracelet to cover the filing fees for his first LLC. She told him not to worry about it. She never brought it up again. And tonight, watching him shake hands and laugh with strangers who only arrived after the risk was gone, she tells herself this is enough, that being here is enough, that watching him win is the reward. Then she sees the woman beside him. And something in Petra Calloway goes very, very still. You need to understand who Petra Calloway is before you understand what this night cost her. She grew up in Akron, Ohio, the middle daughter of a high school history teacher and a woman who sewed alterations from the kitchen table and called it a business. They were not poor, but money was a thing you thought about carefully before spending. Petra learned early that love was not something you talked about. It was something you showed up for. She moved to New York at 23 on a partial scholarship to study fine arts at Cooper Union. She was talented. Her professors used words like distinctive and emotionally precise. She had a show scheduled for her thesis year, a series of large-format oil paintings about working-class American interiors. A gallery in Chelsea had expressed interest. Then she met Marshall Vane at a friend's dinner party in Astoria. He was charismatic in that restless, hungry way that some ambitious men have when they haven't succeeded yet, but are absolutely certain they will. He talked about building something real, about legacy, about not ending up ordinary. Petra was 26. She thought that energy was passion. They married 2 years later. She postponed the Chelsea show. Temporarily, she said. The show never happened. What happened instead was 9 years of building Marshall's dream. When his first startup failed, she paid the legal fees. When his second attempt collapsed, she covered 3 months of rent on her salary alone. When he got the idea for Vane Capital, a boutique investment firm targeting mid-sized tech startups, she took out a personal loan against her future earnings and gave it to him without a contract. He called her his foundation. She believed he meant it. They have a son named Leo. He is 9 years old and looks exactly like Petra. Same careful dark eyes, same way of watching a room before entering it. He is thoughtful and gentle and already too good at reading adult silences. Leo is home tonight with a babysitter. Petra told him she would be home by 10. She did not know yet that the woman standing beside her husband was the reason Marshall had started coming home late. The reason he had stopped reaching for her hand. The reason his iPhone screen now went dark the moment she walked into a room. 200 people, open bar, soft lighting that makes everyone look like the best version of themselves. Petra navigates the room slowly. She knows some of these faces, the ones who were around during the lean years. They greet her warmly but briefly, the way people do when they aren't sure where you rank tonight. She spots Ingrid Fossey near the bar, already watching her. Ingrid is Petra's oldest friend. They met freshman year at Cooper Union, standing in the same registration line, and have been honest with each other in the way that only people who have known each other for decades can manage. Ingrid became a family attorney. She has an office on Park Avenue and a reputation for being the person you want in the room when things go wrong. Ingrid raises her eyebrows, a question without words. "You okay?" Petra gives a small nod that means, "Not sure yet." She turns back toward Marshall. He is at the center of the room now, near the podium, and the woman is still there. Petra can see her clearly. Early 30s, polished, the kind of professional beauty that reads as effortless because the effort is invisible. She wears a deep navy dress and small pearl earrings, and she stands beside Marshall with the quiet familiarity of someone who belongs there. Petra has never seen her before. She asks a man nearby, one of Marshall's early investors, who she is. "Oh, that's Tessa Dorn," he says pleasantly. She's been with Marshall's firm since the beginning, built the whole investor relations strategy, sharp as anything. He pauses. He talks about her constantly, actually. Didn't you know? Petra smiles. Of course. She turns and walks carefully to the restroom. She runs cold water over her wrists, an old trick for panic, and stares at herself in the mirror under the warm hotel lighting. The black dress, the neatly pinned hair, the face of a woman who has held everything together for so long she has forgotten how to fall apart. She thinks about her mother. The funeral had been small. 3 weeks ago. Marshall had attended but left early. There was a meeting, he said, something urgent. He had held Petra's hand exactly once during the service, briefly, before checking his phone. She had told herself he was under stress. She had forgiven it before it finished happening. Marshall takes the podium at 8 o'clock. The room quiets. He looks confident, the practiced kind of confident that comes from having rehearsed in front of a mirror. He is handsome in that blunt, solid way, and he knows how to hold a room. Petra stands near the window. He begins the speech she has heard parts of in the kitchen, in the car, in bed at midnight, while she pretended to be asleep because she didn't have the energy to respond to more rehearsal. He thanks the investors. He thanks his legal team. He thanks Tessa Dorn by name, the woman who made this vision real. And the room applauds, and Tessa smiles with the modest grace of someone who expected this moment. Then Marshall says, "And of course, I want to acknowledge the people who were there from the very beginning." Petra straightens. "My team, my investors, and the friends who believed in this when no one else did." He does not say her name. The applause fills the room. Petra holds her glass with both hands and does not move. She waits. Perhaps he is building to it. Perhaps this is pacing. He steps down from the podium. Tessa hands him a champagne glass. Their fingers touch in the exchange, and neither of them pulls back. Petra watches this from 15 feet away. Then one of the guests, a woman she knows slightly, the wife of an investor, leans over and says quietly, with the kindness of someone who thinks they are delivering information rather than a wound, "You must be so proud of Tessa. Marshall told us she's been his partner through everything. I didn't realize she was at the firm from day one. Did she work with you too?" Petra says very evenly, "I'm Marshall's wife." The woman blinks. "Oh." A pause. "I'm sorry, He introduced Tessa as his founding partner, and I assumed." She stops. She touches Petra's arm once. She walks away. The skyline glitters outside. The lilies smell sweet. The jazz plays something that sounds suddenly like a joke. She finds him near the bar. She does not make a scene. This is important to understand about Petra Calloway. She is not a woman who makes scenes. She spent 9 years managing everything quietly, absorbing everything privately, presenting the world a steady face because someone had to, and that person had always been her. "Who is she?" Petra says. Marshall turns. His expression flattens in a way she recognizes now, the face he uses when he is managing her. "This isn't the night, Petra. You didn't say my name." "I thank the team." "Marshall, you didn't say my name?" He takes a breath. His jaw tightens. Around them, the party continues, oblivious. "I'll explain everything later. Tonight is important." Important. She hears the word like she's hearing it for the first time. "My mother's funeral was 3 weeks ago. You left early for her. Who is Tessa Dorn?" His expression does not change, and that is the answer. "We'll talk at home," he says. "Yes," Petra says. "We will." She walks back to Ingrid. She picks up her coat from the coat check. She says nothing to anyone. She gets in a cab, a yellow cab, because she cannot think clearly enough to open an app. And she rides home to Brooklyn and pays the babysitter and checks on Leo, who is asleep with one arm around a worn stuffed dog he has had since he was 4. She sits on the edge of his bed for a long time. Then she goes to the kitchen and opens her laptop and looks up the business registry for Vane Capital Partners. Her name is not there. She searches deeper. She finds the original operating agreement from 2 years ago. The version she remembers signing, the one that listed her as a 10% equity holder in recognition of the personal loan she extended to fund the firm's launch. Then she finds an amended version, filed 8 months ago, without her signature. The next morning, Marshall is gone before she wakes up. He leaves a note on the kitchen counter, 3 lines on a yellow post-it in his slightly cramped handwriting that says only, "We should talk soon. Not everything is how it looks. Give me space to explain." She photographs it, files it. She takes Leo to school. He eats cereal without talking much, which means he picked up on something last night, even though he wasn't there. Children are seismic instruments. They detect the tremors adults think they're hiding. "Are you and Dad fighting?" he asks, backpack on, standing at the door. "We're working some things out," she says. He considers this. "Okay." He kisses her cheek. "You smell like regular, Mom." She doesn't know what that means entirely, but it makes her eyes sting. After drop-off, she calls Ingrid. 2 rings, and she picks up. "I saw the registry," Petra says. A beat of silence. "How long ago was it amended?" 8 months. "Okay." Ingrid's voice shifts into a register Petra recognizes. Quieter, more precise. Attorney mode. "Don't touch anything financial. Don't move any accounts. Don't confront him with the document yet. Come to my office at noon." Petra agrees. She's walking back to her car when her phone buzzes. Unknown number. She answers without thinking. "Is this Petra Vane?" It is a woman's voice. Composed, measured. "Calloway," Petra says. "Petra Calloway." A pause. "This is Tessa Dorn." Petra stops walking. A man passes her on the sidewalk with a coffee. A bus rumbles by. The world goes on without her permission. "I wanted to speak with you," Tessa says, before Marshall does. "I think you deserve that. We've been together for 14 months. I know that's not what you wanted to hear. He told me you both had an understanding. We have a son," Petra says. Silence. "I know," Tessa says, and her voice is quieter now. He told you we had an understanding. Yes. Petra looks at the sidewalk. A pigeon pecks at something near the curb. An ordinary morning in Brooklyn, while her marriage ends on a phone call. Tessa Dorn goes silent for a long time after that. Then, no, he didn't tell me that. Petra hangs up. She sits in her car for 11 minutes. She knows it's 11 because she watches the clock. The small digital display on the dashboard of her 7-year-old Subaru. Practical and unspectacular and paid off. Like everything she owns. She watches the numbers change. It is something to look at that doesn't require anything from her. Then she puts the car in drive and goes to Ingrid's office. She doesn't cry in the office, which surprises Ingrid. Petra sits in the chair across from the desk and explains everything precisely. The amended filing, the speech, the phone call. Ingrid takes notes without commenting on the absence of tears. She knows Petra. The tears will come later, privately, where no one has to manage them. He committed fraud, Ingrid says finally. Amending a joint equity agreement without your signature isn't a gray area. That's not a divorce complication. That's a separate legal matter. I don't want to destroy him, Petra says. I know you don't. Ingrid leans forward. But you need to let the law do what it does, Petra. You didn't create this situation. You cannot be gentle about protecting yourself from it. She goes home that evening. Leo is quieter than usual at dinner. He eats half his pasta and then asks if he can show her something. He leads her to his room and shows her a drawing he made at school. A woman standing in front of a large building. The building has lights in the windows. The woman has dark hair and is holding a paintbrush. That's you? He says. My teacher asked us to draw someone brave. She holds the drawing until her hands stop shaking. Then she puts Leo to bed and goes back to the kitchen and sits in the dark for a while. This is what the lowest point looks like, she realizes. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just a woman at a kitchen table in Brooklyn in the dark, with a child's drawing on the counter and 9 years of her life rearranging themselves into something she doesn't have a name for yet. Marshall comes home 2 days later. He does not call first. He walks in with his key like a man who has decided that confidence is the strategy. He is carrying a dry cleaning bag and his MacBook Pro, and he sets both down on the kitchen island and looks at Petra with an expression that is almost apologetic. I owe you an explanation, he begins. You owe me equity, Petra says. But go ahead. He flinches slightly. Then he gathers himself. He tells her the amended filing was a temporary measure, a legal technicality recommended by his corporate attorney to simplify the capital structure during the launch phase. He tells her it was always going to be restored. He tells her that Tessa is a business relationship that became complicated, but that he has been under enormous pressure, and she must understand that. Petra listens without interrupting. When he finishes, she says, Did your attorney tell you to remove my name? Or did you instruct your attorney to remove my name? He pauses for just a half second too long. It was collaborative, he says. Then you'll have no problem providing the correspondence between you. Another pause. Petra, I'm trying to talk to you. I'm talking to you, she says. I'm asking a specific question. He shifts into a different register now, the gentle, patient one, the one that implies she is being emotional and he is being reasonable. He used this voice during the hard years too, she realizes. She had mistaken it then for maturity. I think we both need space, he says. I think we should consider... I've already spoken to an attorney, Petra says. He stills. A good one, she adds. He looks at her for a long moment. Something crosses his face, not fear exactly, but the first awareness that the ground has shifted and he is not the one who moved it. "Who?" he says. She doesn't answer. "Petra, who did you talk to?" She picks up Leo's drawing from the counter, where she left it as a reminder this morning. She looks at it once. She sets it back down. Marshall's face does something she has never seen it do before. It goes white. Walter Breck is 67 years old, and he has been investing in startups since before Marshall Vane had a driver's license. He is not famous in the celebrity sense, but inside the world of mid-tier venture capital in New York, his name is a credential. His involvement in a fund means something. His withdrawal means something catastrophic. He had invested in Vane Capital Partners 18 months ago. He had done it, he later told Petra, because of her. They had met at a Cooper Union alumni fundraiser 2 years prior. Petra had been there reluctantly. Marshall had declined to come, and she'd spent the evening talking to a quiet, older man near the drinks table about the relationship between risk and patience. In art, in business, in life. They had exchanged cards. She had forgotten about it. Walter Breck had not. When Marshall pitched to him, Walter had asked, specifically, whether Petra Calloway was involved in the firm. Marshall had said yes. That was a lie Walter Breck had recently discovered. Petra had not called him. He had called her 2 days after the launch event, from a number she didn't recognize. He introduced himself. He told her he had attended the launch event. He had noticed that her name appeared nowhere in the materials. He had pulled the current filings that night. He had also, quietly, made a few calls. He told her he wanted to meet. She stands in her kitchen now, watching Marshall's face process this information. And she understands something she has never quite understood before. The years she spent holding things together were not quiet and invisible the way she thought. Some people saw her. They just waited to see whether she knew it. "He's pulling his investment?" Marshall says. "He didn't tell me that," Petra says, which is technically true. Marshall grabs his MacBook. His fingers aren't quite steady. This is not what it looks like, Petra. You don't understand the full picture. Go home, Marshall, she says, or go to Tessa's. But go. He goes. The thing about having a brilliant attorney as your best friend is that she has already thought of things you haven't reached yet. Ingrid Fossey brings in Diane Cho. Diane is a senior partner at Forsyth Legal Group on Lexington Avenue, a firm with a reputation for forensic financial work in high-conflict divorces and corporate fraud cases. She is 45, Korean-American, methodical, and unimpressed by anyone. And she has the quiet authority of a person who has sat in more rooms than you have and won more arguments than she's started. She meets with Petra on a Thursday morning. The office overlooks Lexington Avenue, and there is a cup of green tea on the desk that no one is drinking. Diane lays out what they have: the unsigned, amended filing, a clear legal vulnerability, Marshall's email correspondence, subpoenaed through the preliminary legal process, showing that the removal of Petra's name was not a technicality, but a deliberate instruction he gave his corporate attorney with a specific note. Simplify the cap table before launch. Petra won't contest it. Won't contest it. Ingrid reads that line aloud once. Petra feels the words land like something physical. He knew her. He had used what he knew, her patience, her dislike of confrontation, her habit of absorbing things quietly, as a weapon against her. He had assumed that the woman who had covered his debts and dried his tears and sold her grandmother's bracelet to fund his dream would simply not notice when he took the last thing she'd earned. What are our options? Petra asks. Diane explains them cleanly and without drama. A civil suit for fraudulent equity removal, folded into the divorce proceedings. The personal loan, with the original documentation Petra has kept, because Petra keeps everything in a labeled accordion folder in her closet, is fully recoverable with interest. Walter Brecht's disclosure corroborates the misrepresentation to investors. He told his investor that you were involved, Diane says, to secure the investment. You weren't named in the filings. That's a material misrepresentation. It's not just a marital dispute. Petra is quiet for a moment. He built everything on my name, she says slowly, and then took my name off it. Yes, Diane says. Part 11. The twist. What Petra actually has here is what Marshall Vane did not know. He did not know that Petra, in the quiet evenings after Leo went to bed, while he was traveling or working late or doing whatever he told her he was doing, had begun painting again. Small at first, watercolors on paper, then larger. She had set up a corner of the guest room as a studio, a folding table, a clip light, tubes of paint she bought from a shop on Atlantic Avenue. She had sent photographs of her work to an old professor from Cooper Union, Professor Gerald Fitch. He had responded to her email, the one she sent in the dark that night, within 12 hours. He had been following her work, he said. He had heard she was still painting. A gallery in Tribeca had recently inquired about her, he said, through him, because they had lost track of her. The gallery was Alden Marks. Alden Marks Gallery was not a small operation. It was one of the most respected mid-size contemporary galleries in Lower Manhattan. They had shown 3 artists who later sold work at Christie's. Petra had no idea they knew her name. She had stopped believing her name meant anything, artistically, somewhere around year 4 of Marshall's first startup. She had put the painting away, like a thing that belonged to someone else, a younger woman, less realistic, less responsible. But it turned out the world had kept a small, quiet light on for her. Gerald Fitch made the introduction. The gallery director, a woman named Sable Rourke, came to Brooklyn to see the work Petra had been doing in the guest room. She stood in front of a large canvas, a painting of a kitchen table at night, 1 lamp, a child's drawing visible in the corner. And she said, very quietly, "When can you be ready?" Petra said, "Ready for what?" "A show," Sable said. This happened the same week as the divorce filing. Marshall found out about it the way he found out about most things by then. Not from Petra, but from someone else. A journalist covering the Alden Marks spring calendar had mentioned Petra Calloway, the artist, wife of embattled finance founder Marshall Vane. The article framed her as the subject of the emerging show, not as a wife, as an artist. One Saturday morning, 6 weeks after the launch party, Petra takes Leo to a bookstore on Atlantic Avenue. The kind with wooden floors and overstuffed shelves and a section in the back with armchairs where children sit and read without buying anything. Leo picks up a book about oceans. He sits in one of the armchairs. Petra stands nearby with a coffee from the small counter by the entrance. She's looking at a table of new releases. Atomic Habits is there, a book a friend had recommended months ago and she hadn't gotten to. She picks it up, looks at the back, puts it down. Leo looks up from his ocean book. "Mom," he says. Is Dad not coming home?" She's careful. "We're still working things out." He considers this. Marcus at school said his parents worked things out and then got divorced. He says the word cleanly, without drama, the way children say things that cost adults everything. Is that what's happening? She comes and sits on the arm of his chair. "I don't know yet," she tells him. "But I promise you'll be okay either way. You'll have both of us." He nods slowly. "Dad wasn't at my soccer game." "I know." He said he would be. She doesn't have an answer for this. She puts her arm around him instead, and he leans into her the way he has since he was small, completely trusting the whole weight. Did he ever come to your things? Leo asks. The art ones? The question is so simple and so perfect. Sometimes, she says, when he could. Leo looks at his book, looks back at her. I come to all of yours, he says, like it's a fact, like it's obvious, because to him it is. She buys him the ocean book and herself the Atomic Habits, and they walk home in the November cold, Leo's hand in hers, and she thinks, this is the part that is real. This sidewalk, this hand, this small person who sees her. The fractures appear slowly at first, the way structural damage always does. Walter Breck formally requests a financial audit of Vane Capital Partners as a condition of maintaining his investment. This is within his rights under the original investor agreement. Marshall's legal team contests it. The contestation draws attention from two other early-stage investors who had not previously considered auditing anything. Then Tessa Dorn does something no one expected. She hires her own attorney. It turns out that Tessa had been promised an equity stake in the firm, verbally, by Marshall, documented in a series of text messages that his attorney would later describe as inadvisable. She had been told she was a co-founder. Her name was not in the documents either. She had been, in a different way, given the same treatment as Petra. Used, leveraged, and quietly excluded from the things she helped build. The irony is not lost on Petra. She does not feel sympathy for Tessa exactly. What Tessa did to her marriage is a separate accounting. But she recognizes the shape of it. The same man, the same pattern, different targets. Ingrid calls her on a Tuesday afternoon. Marshall's corporate attorney just withdrew, she says. Too much exposure. And there's a reporter at the Times, the business section, who's been making calls. Petra is quiet. His launch event press coverage is already turning. Ingrid continues. The investor misrepresentation angle is what's gaining traction. The equity fraud is the legal story. But the personal narrative, the wife who funded everything and got erased, that's the human story. And people are paying attention. I didn't go to the press, Petra says. I know, Ingrid says. You didn't have to. His behavior is the story. That evening, the New York Times business section publishes a brief item, 4 paragraphs, about the audit request at Vane Capital Partners. It mentions that the firm's founding equity structure is under legal review. It mentions Walter Breck's name. It does not mention Petra's name yet, but the headline uses the word Vane. They meet at the River Cafe in Brooklyn. His suggestion, which surprises her, given that it's her neighborhood. He arrives before she does, which also surprises her. Walter Breck is not what she expected from his voice on the phone. He is tall and slightly stooped, with white hair and the deliberate movements of a man who has learned not to rush. He stands when she arrives. He extends his hand. I've wanted to meet you properly for a long time, he says. They sit by the window. Outside, the East River catches the afternoon light. The Manhattan Bridge is visible in the distance, its cables like fine lines in a drawing. He tells her what he knows, and how he knows it. At the alumni event where they'd spoken, he had already been aware of Marshall Vane's pitch through a mutual colleague. He had been cautious. Then Petra had walked in. Not with Marshall, he noted, because Marshall hadn't come. And they had talked. He had looked her up afterward. He had found the work she'd done before her marriage. He had been genuinely impressed. When Marshall's pitch arrived formally on his desk and cited Petra Calloway as a founding stakeholder, Walter had made his decision partly on that basis. He believed in people who believed in other people who deserved it. "He used your credibility to secure my money," Walter says plainly. "And then he removed you from the structure. I don't invest in that kind of character." Petra wraps both hands around her coffee cup. "I want to ask you something," Walter says, "and you can tell me it's none of my business." She nods. "The gallery show, the paintings, are you going to pursue that seriously?" "Yes," she says. It is the first time she has said it out loud as a commitment rather than a hope. Walter nods slowly. "Good." He pauses. "There's a philanthropic arts initiative I've been involved with for several years. We fund working artists who are re-entering practice after significant life interruptions. Studio space, material costs, a living stipend for 12 months. He looks at her directly. "I'd like to nominate you." She opens her mouth. Marshall's new attorney is named Philip Coates. He is pleasant in the manner of someone paid to be pleasant, and he calls Diane Cho on a Wednesday morning with what he describes as a generous resolution. Diane relays the terms to Petra that afternoon. Marshall is offering a cash settlement equivalent to twice the personal loan amount, a signed acknowledgement that she held an equity interest in the original structure, an agreed-upon joint custody arrangement for Leo, a non-disclosure agreement covering the equity dispute and the circumstances of the marriage dissolution. Petra reads the terms. She is sitting in Diane's office on Lexington Avenue again, the same chair as before, the same untouched tea on the desk. "He wants the NDA," Petra says. "Yes." "Because of the Times piece." "Partly. Because of Walter Breck's audit. Because of Tessa Dorn's separate suit. Because 2 more investors have now requested transparency documentation." Diane sets the paper down. "He needs this to go away quietly." Petra thinks about that. Quietly is how she has lived for 9 years. Quietly absorbing, quietly enduring, quietly not contesting things she should have contested. Quietly selling her grandmother's bracelet and not mentioning it. "What happens if we don't take it?" she asks. The fraud case proceeds. Full discovery. All financial records, his and the firm's, become part of the legal record. That record is, in part, accessible to the press once filed. And the equity. If we win, and I think we win, you get the original 10% stake reinstated, plus damages, plus the full loan recovery. 10% of a firm that may collapse under the weight of its own legal problems, Petra says. Diane almost smiles. That's accurate. What does Tessa get if her suit proceeds? That's separate. But her documentation supports ours. If both cases proceed simultaneously, his exposure doubles. Petra is quiet for a long time. She thinks of Leo's drawing, the woman with the paintbrush, the word brave. She thinks of Marshall's face at the door, the regret and resentment look of a man watching something he chose to break. Diane Cho is excellent at her job. The counter-proposal takes 4 days to prepare. When it is filed, it is 23 pages long, and it is, by any legal standard, devastating in its precision. It demands full reinstatement of the original equity stake in Vane Capital Partners, full recovery of the personal loan with 7 years of compounded interest, a formal legal acknowledgement, on record, not sealed, that the equity amendment was executed without Petra's knowledge or consent, an agreed financial disclosure from Marshall to the existing investors, explaining the structural error and its resolution. And no NDA Philip Coates calls Diane within 6 hours of receiving it. This will end him, he says. My client isn't trying to end anyone, Diane says. She's asking for what was always hers. The negotiation takes 3 weeks. In those 3 weeks, the Times piece generates a follow-up story. A finance podcast with a substantial audience covers the investor misrepresentation angle. Walter Breck gives a brief, carefully worded public statement confirming he is in the process of reassessing his relationship with Vane Capital. Not mentioning Petra by name, but not needing to. 2 of the firm's 4 active portfolio companies place their next round funding commitments on hold pending the outcome of the legal review. Marshall calls Petra directly once on a Sunday night. She lets it go to voicemail. He says, "I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I need you to understand. I never meant for it to go this far." She plays the voicemail to Ingrid. Ingrid says, "He never meant for you to find out. That's different from never meaning for it to happen." Petra deletes the voicemail. Leo has dinner with Marshall on Wednesday nights, per the interim custody arrangement. He comes home those evenings quieter than usual, but okay. He shows Petra his math homework and talks about soccer and asks sometimes about the paintings she's working on. He is navigating it the way children navigate things that are too large for them. Carefully, one day at a time, trusting that the adults will hold the structure. She does not say anything bad about Marshall to Leo. Not once. The show opens on a Thursday evening in March. Alden Marks Gallery in Tribeca. 11 large format paintings and 4 smaller works. The collection is called simply interior, a word that means both the inside of a room and the inside of a self. Petra stands in the center of the gallery at 6:45, 15 minutes before doors open, and looks at what she made. The paintings are domestic scenes, a kitchen at midnight, a child's shoes by a door, a window with the blind half raised, a table set for one. They are not sad exactly. They are precise. They see the ordinary world with a kind of radical attention that makes familiar things feel, for a moment, entirely new. Sable Rourke stands beside her. "Ready?" Sable asks. "No," Petra says. "Let's go." The doors open. The room fills. Not just art world people, though there are those. Critics and collectors and the kind of people who show up to openings and stand in corners looking thoughtful. But also, teachers from the school where Petra used to work. Parents from Leo's school. People Ingrid had quietly, without being asked, let know. A few of Walter Breck's contacts from the Arts Initiative. And Ingrid herself, standing near a painting of a child's drawing on a kitchen counter, holding a glass of wine and crying very slightly and trying not to. Leo is there. He is wearing a blue button-down that he insisted on choosing himself. And he walks through the gallery with his hands in his pockets, looking at each painting with the serious attention of someone doing important work. He stops in front of the largest canvas, a painting of a window at night, a city skyline in the distance, a woman's reflection faint in the glass. "Is that you?" he asks. "In a way," she says. He thinks about this. "You look strong," he says. He says it like an observation, not a compliment. Just a fact he has recorded. She puts her arm around his shoulders. 2 paintings sell before the end of the evening. 3 more receive serious inquiry. A critic from a respected arts publication stops Petra near the back wall and says, "The restraint is extraordinary. How long have you been working again?" The settlement is finalized in April. Diane Cho calls Petra at 11 in the morning on a Tuesday to tell her. Petra is in her studio, the real one now, not the guest room corner, but the space Walter Breck's Arts Initiative has funded for her in a building in Dumbo that smells like linseed oil and river air. She's standing in front of a canvas when the call comes. She has paint on her left hand. She listens to Diane read the final terms. The equity stake is reinstated. 10% of Vane Capital Partners, now formally on record. The personal loan is fully recovered with interest. The formal legal acknowledgement is filed publicly. No NDA. Marshall does not attend the signing. He sends Philip Coates. Vane Capital Partners survives, barely, after a restructuring that costs Marshall 2 board seats and operational control. He remains as a minority stakeholder and ceremonial figure. Tessa Dorn's separate suit is settled privately. She leaves the firm. 2 new managing partners take the lead. Marshall's name is still on the door. But the story of how it got there is now part of the public record. He reaches out to Petra one final time. Not a call, a letter, handwritten, sent to the Brooklyn address. She reads it once. He says he is sorry. He says he knows sorry is insufficient. He says he hopes Leo doesn't end up hating him. He says a few other things that are probably true and probably too late. She reads it once. She does not respond. She keeps the letter in the accordion folder with the original loan documents and the founding operating agreement, and the note she photographed from the kitchen counter that said, "Not everything is how it looks." History, she thinks, should be kept accurately. That evening, she picks Leo up from school, and they stop at the bookstore on Atlantic Avenue, their place now by habit. He wants a new ocean book. He has decided he likes whales specifically. She looks at the shelves while he browses. She picks up a copy of Women Who Run with the Wolves. She has meant to read it for years. She buys it. It is a Sunday morning in May. Petra's studio in Dumbo has large north-facing windows, and today the light is doing something extraordinary. Coming in pale and even, the way good light comes in when the city is still deciding whether to wake up. The East River is visible from the corner of the window if you lean slightly. She's working on a new series, larger, more ambitious. These paintings are not interiors exactly. They are thresholds, doorways, stairs, bridges, places of transition, the in-between. She has been awarded a residency, a month-long program at a working artist community in upstate New York, beginning in July. Gerald Fitch put her name forward. Walter Breck wrote a supporting letter. She will take Leo. He is already interested in whether there will be forests and whether she will let him fish. Sable Rourke has confirmed a second show for the following spring. Ingrid comes by on Sunday afternoons, sometimes with coffee, and they sit on the floor of the studio and talk about work, about Leo, about the kind of things that take years to work through and require the honesty of people who knew you before you were your best self. "Are you happy?" Ingrid asks one afternoon. Petra thinks about it genuinely. "I'm not afraid," she says, which I think is what I was confusing for happiness for most of my adult life. Ingrid looks at her for a moment. "That's the most interesting thing you've said in years. I have a lot of time to think now." "Good. Think more." There is a man, too. Not a dramatic entrance, not a rescue. His name is Felix Rourke. He is Sable's younger brother. He is a structural engineer who restores old buildings and has strong opinions about light and space and the ways materials age. He met Petra at the gallery opening, where he stood in front of the kitchen at midnight painting for a long time without saying anything. She noticed. They have had coffee twice. The second time lasted 4 hours, and neither of them noticed until the cafe started stacking chairs. He is not a rush. He is a quiet noticing, the kind that doesn't demand anything yet, but keeps arriving. She is in no hurry. 1 year after the night at the Kimberly Hotel, 1 year after standing in the back of a room that had forgotten her name, Petra Calloway is sitting on the floor of her studio in Dumbo with a cup of coffee and a canvas propped against the wall that she isn't sure about yet. Leo is at soccer practice. He has gotten better. His coach told Petra last week that he has a quiet kind of confidence on the field. The kind that comes from knowing exactly how to read the game without needing to be the loudest person in it. She told him this later and he said, shrugging, "I learned from watching you, Mom." She thinks about what she has now. A studio, a show, a residency coming, an equity stake in a firm she never asked to be part of, but earned fairly. Money she is no longer afraid of losing because she knows now how to make it herself. A best friend who is also a brilliant attorney. A mentor who saw her before she saw herself. A son who draws pictures of her when asked to draw someone brave. And something else. Quiet, unhurried, not yet named. Felix sent her a photograph this morning. A building he is restoring in the Bronx, 100 years old. The original plaster walls coming back under the damaged surface. He wrote, "Found the good bones. Knew they were in there." She looked at it for a long time. She wrote back, "That's what good work looks like." She didn't put a period on it. She let it breathe. She stands up. She goes to the canvas. She picks up a brush. Outside, the city moves the way cities move, without ceremony, without pause, without care for individual stories. But Petra Calloway's story is being told differently now. In paint, in a public legal record, in a child's drawing on a gallery wall, in the testimony of a quiet investor who knew what honesty looked like and was willing to wait for it. She stayed loyal through his hardest years, and when he betrayed her at her lowest, she did not become less. She became, finally, fully, entirely herself. Opens conversationally. So, that's where Petra's story ends. The way a real person would wrap up a conversation, not a script. The Marcus Aurelius quote, "What stands in the way becomes the way," is woven in naturally as emotional validation, not a lecture. The call to action to like, share, and subscribe is warm and personal, not transactional. The final line, "You are not alone in this. You never were," mirrors the emotional core of Petra's story, written to satisfy YouTube's content authenticity guidelines. It clearly states, all characters are fictional. No real individuals or companies are referenced. Not factual reporting or legal advice. Purely for entertainment and emotional reflection. This protects the channel from claims of defamation, misinformation flags, or content manipulation violations. Especially important for drama channels where stories feel realistic.